because for many people, no matter what I would say, no matter who believes what, where their soul is now, what beliefs they are caught up in, a crater of great despair, so to speak, opens up in a lot of people. So it's really like this. Some are intimidated, afraid of the coronavirus. Others are afraid of the measures that will be taken. That means, as we outlined a bit in the preliminary conversation, everyone is afraid somewhere. And this, yes, what can you advise people at the moment from your mystical practice of everyday life, where everything is falling away, where their income is falling away, where their existence is starting to be threatened? Because that's already happening right now, and break away the orientation pillars. Because they may no longer be able to fully follow certain things and do not understand why or what measures they have taken. But at the same time, they would like to behave properly and break up their friendships, because arguments break up relationships. Whatever direction the crisis takes, what can you give people right now? How do you get back to yourself? How?
I understand the question. I'm sorting things out in my head right now because so many things come to mind at once. I'll take the example that I only developed my mysticism to save myself, so to speak. So I'm a person who has experienced extreme violence in my family, plus again, I'm a person, we argue as ex-osses, so to speak, but for me it was dictatorship, so no real freedom of the press. If you write something wrong, the edition will be crushed and stuff like that. And as someone who had experienced freedom almost nowhere, and a lot of well-adjusted people, I developed my mystique. First of all, get rid of panic states, anxiety states, and depression. And that's a great benefit to me now that I've worked through my biggest crises with the help of monks' mental techniques, so that I now have a certain level of calm. Calmness doesn't mean insensitivity. I'm in a lot of pain. So if I share the desperation of my favorite hairdresser here in Kiel, also in my own entrepreneurial area, where I am happy that I actually have a university salary, otherwise I would be broke. But if you really have an entrepreneurial spirit, it really hurts to see what that means economically. So first of all, really compassion, that I share this and don't stand above it, otherwise it's easy to talk. And when I look at people, YouTube channels, Jürgen Höller, who are just really looking forward to the time after the crisis and say, hey, why not invest in your stocks in a counter-cyclical manner? Now you can buy. Well, he didn't say that literally, but I can imagine it because he's beaming with joy, and all the salespeople who really have finances in the background are now selling strategies on how you can emerge from the crisis as a winner. Of course I know that stocks and gold can be bought counter-cyclically, but I have no reserves. But that's something else again. Well, for me, I deliberately formulate it very, very subjectively so as not to confuse anyone. It wasn't triggering in me right now, so it's all very personal. Please don't say anything political here, and of course I agree with all government measures always, and in every country where I live. This has already been formulated in the direction of my employer. So very personal things are not political. I agree with everyone. So I observed within myself that the fear of corona is very, very, very relative, because I am a very wait-and-see person and a scientist. And I first expect what the statistics are like, what the database is like. He would first like to take note of various theses. So I'm just a classic university professor. And on top of that, I know from mental training that the worst thing is when the immune system collapses, and that collapses due to stress and fear. So if you look at people like Wim Hof, cold training, the most important thing is that you cultivate positive feelings, and then you have a great defense system. Of course it's easy to say, and I was actually a former person with a lot of anxiety. And now I noticed how this feeling of being trapped inside me was getting bigger and bigger, and in fact old GDR traumas too. That's it in me. Old political traumas as ex-civil rights activists broke out, insomnia, tantrums, sweats, help when they lock down the country, what comes next? There are really phases where old things come up, where you can no longer clearly distinguish between the present and the past. And of course, that put a strain on my relationship at first. But as a mystic, first of all, radically, really observe your feelings, observe your thoughts. What patterns are being triggered now? And the main patterns are, on the one hand, I think, fear of death and people with fear of death. You can control them. So if you want to control people, scare them, and then present yourself as a dear mom or dad who has a solution. Well, I think this is a very dangerous condition because people start to lose their minds when they are afraid. And here's really tip one. For those who don't really like mysticism, I'll say Harry Potter. What will Harry Potter be told when the Dementors come? Dementors are beings and forces that drive you crazy and are really overpowering. Harry Potter, as a magician, knows that the most important thing is mind control, namely, having control over your own consciousness. So don't have a controlled consciousness by others who tell me something. Monks consider thoughts that come from outside to be demons. For the monk, the battle is always that of the logos fighting against the dialogismoi. Dialogismoi are nonsense, are claims, are fantasies. The monk always tries to have a clear light of consciousness in all situations of life. Now, I'm coming back to Harry Potter. When the Dementors come, he should do two things in particular. He should say a mantra. A mantra is a sentence that connects you with a highest, clearest instance of consciousness. That can be love for you. That can be a name of God for you. Especially sentences with I am. When others want to drive you crazy, tell yourself over and over again who I am, namely in the sense that I am. So if you're crazy and an atheist, you could say the sentence over and over again very often, I am love, I am power, I am control. Do you realize that this is how you take back your power, self-empowerment? Never let others control your mind. It's your mind. And the chance can be out of sheer desperation. So, I have enough old despair that can be triggered. But for people who may now be despairing for the first time, desperation can drive you into the situation for the first time that you realize your mind is worth it, that you manage him. Not just manage your account, manage your family, or manage the number of toilet paper rolls in the house, but manage your consciousness. Maybe some people will now wake up and realize how easily they can be driven crazy, what can be triggered in them. So that would be a mantra, a different mantra, I am light and love. Or another one, yes, just take Jesus Christ, and be it that for my sake, if you like smoking weed and doing other things. Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. So take anything, and the content of the mantra is not arbitrary. So if you had as a mantra, all banana, your unconscious mind would make you fixated on bananas. The mantra is glue, consciousness glue. It attaches your consciousness to the highest possible authority. So the mystic wants to stick together with God. The mantra is your glue, two-component glue, yes. And because you repeat it often, look, there are political mantras, pensions are secure. Or I take it again, I'm speaking from my dwarf country. The GDR, it's like Atlantis gone, no one can be angry. Ulbricht, no one has any intention of building a wall. On the contrary, we are building peaceful workers' housing. Yes, that has been repeated often enough. One thing is a fantasy. And now you can go crazy and say, yes, it signals left but turns right. Blinking left is an intention, is a fantasy. Turning right is perception. You can now learn the main difference between the mystics in crisis situations. What is a fantasy and what is a perception? My advice is never doubt perception, but always doubt fantasy. Then you will realize what is fake reality and what is reality. When I have the fantasy, oh, my partner will always be cute, yes, is a fantasy. If he now says, hey, you stupid chicken, that's a perception, that hurts. More so, and how do you deal with a mantra? Like an advertising slogan, it burns itself deeper and deeper into you. And the more you repeat it, the more Dementor certain you become. Many people describe this technique as feeling enveloped in a protective cloak of love. Your mind becomes completely calm, so pick one, stick with the same one. So Toyota will never change the slogan, "Nothing is impossible instead. We are the best." Yes, no, in the unconscious it is the same. Speak as often as possible, preferably half loudly if others are listening. Yes, mumble in a headset or something like that, then it is even considered important. Start before you go to sleep and always do it when your thoughts start racing. Help the Dementors, help the Dementors. My evil GDR comes running again, or Corona eats me, Corona is here behind me, or if other forms of madness arise in you. Help, I'm being chased by flying thumbtacks. Yes, the mantra will always bring you back to perception from fantasies, and that is why it is the best magical protection for Harry Potter. And another tip, never try to use a mantra to drive away thumbtacks, but if you now have the mantra, I am light and love, even if you might almost wet your pants with fear, or if they already smell. So I am works magic. When someone says you are, they want to cast a spell on you. Mostly those in fairy tales fell for it. They were a princess before, and now someone says, "You're just an ugly toad to me," or "You're just a subject to me, and you have to do what I say, as long as you put your feet under my subject's table." Nice old parenting phrases, then helps to disenchant. You don't have to wait for someone to find you and kiss you in your deep well. Just keep telling yourself, I am power. I am radiant consciousness, or my thing. I am a princess. And so staple the sentences with which to bewitch you. You're dying. Maybe you'll just die soon. You'll soon. What do I know? You'll soon be doing gardening for Erich Honecker or something like that. So no matter what breaks out in you, my mantra is Jesus Christ. And then I would speak the mantra for a while. Jesus Christ for my Erich Honecker fantasies. Jesus Christ for my Erich Honecker nightmares. Jesus Christ for my fears, and soon addressed as a comrade again become or something. So put the madness behind the mantra, otherwise you will divide yourself. That means fear is allowed, madness is allowed, but the clear light also shines at the same time, and then you will have a basic mystical experience. Light is always stronger than darkness. Darkness is just the absence of clear light of consciousness. That's why even Christian mystics never had a real devil, i.e. because I experienced so much evil from so-called mother and father. These words triggered fantasies in me, but the reality for me was that they were almost killers and beasts. This is very, very painful, because letting go of a fantasy about your parents' home. That's why when I studied theology, I was very concerned with all philosophical theories of evil. Philosophically, spiritually, devils either exist or not. Is his name now Mama or not, or something like that? And the redeeming thing for me, even on a conceptual level, was evil, or let's call it madness, is privatio boni, is robbery of the good. Evil only exists as a parasite. It waits for it. It only uses up the substance that it gives up.
It's best if you give it voluntarily.
Yes, and therefore where the sun rises, darkness automatically disappears. So please never dwell on it. Even if you think, what do I have to do now? How do I fight evil? This is the monk's main mistake, trying to fight evil directly. Then you pay attention to whatever is evil for you now. That's adding fuel to the fire. No mystic does that, and that's bad. A theologian named Karl Barth was Swiss, and, as the Germans under Hitler, increasingly realized, oh, one is a fantasy, but the other is now a very, very evil reality that is taking its course. Then people dealt with metaphysical questions in a more symbolic way, and Karl Barth then said, yes, if the devil really existed, the devil also has to cart the stones to build the kingdom of God. And he said, yes, if the devil appeared to him, what would he do? Now, I don't speak Swiss German very well, but he said I would only give him a quick sidelong glance. So really, this is how you deal with it now, no matter what evil is for you. Really take note of it, because the one who is too traumatized retreats into a dream world. The one divides, the other, the depressed one, resigns. There's nothing you can do. I feel so helpless, and so he leaves. Signum is the standard used in warfare in the old Roman Empire, so he resigns. He's now leaving the country to evil, so to speak. What does the mystic do? He stays in his place. He notices what's happening, but doesn't let it dictate his agenda. I'll take Karl Barth again. He sat in the Ettel monastery for a long time, while the World War was raging around him, and continued to write his church dogmatics, so that's endless volumes. And he said, even now the monks don't stop, and right now they don't stop praying their hourly prayers and this rhythm of life. And that's it. It also cost me a lot of strength not to read the new reports here every day, whether from a political point of view or from an epidemic policy point of view. First, I got all the information that was important to me, but I started to pay attention to it. Am I just doing this out of fear? Do I have enough data? Is there security in such and such a way? And then I particularly concentrated on to continue doing healing meditation, going about my daily business, and above all, having a good time. So to really pay attention, the most important thing is not to let this open heart turn to stone. Because of all the fear and trauma, fear eats up the soul. And again, to the poor corona-fearful ones, if you're afraid, your immune system collapses incredibly quickly. And now the death statistics. I got this from a doctor for psychosomatic medicine who says 70% of all illnesses that lead to death and that have become chronic are caused by stress. So I once thought, hey, you could rather smoke, or those traffic victims, I don't want to sugarcoat anything, but every office door should actually have a foot with a little note hanging on it, like on cigarette packs. And then it says, stress kills 70% of all people. And now that's a really big killer roller.
Yes, that is, I have also dealt a lot with the new medicine, which, so to speak, only derives the origin of illnesses from psychological reasons. And basically, of course, we are now collectively in a, as you said, in a mass paralysis and shock. Yes, and when we wake up from this shock and begin to heal, we will probably have symptoms of illness because we will recover from this shock. That shouldn't scare us, but it really is. It's the main concern. That's what I had in mind in our conversation, to give people the opportunity to realize that you can perceive things mentally without them. Lets yourself into your heart and just say, okay, this and that is being said right now, but what is it really doing to me? And what is really happening right now at the moment? When you are in the moment, nothing is happening at first. You are just there in being. You are not in some kind of fear, or you are not in some kind of contagion or something. But you are. Where you are, for example, under a tree, and you see a crane, or you see the birds and the flowers, and then you are not at all in any situation that is currently being described.